This is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org. I am here in Austria, and I'm joined by Charlie Skelton, an amazing journalist who writes for The Guardian and many other online publications. Now, me and Charlie wanted to discuss something very serious and very important. We just came from the G7 Press Center, where we literally saw the death of journalism, the final nail in its coffin. It was just incredible to see. Charlie, you were there as well with me. Can you just tell us what we saw?
Well, it's a bit hard to describe. I'm still processing it. You described it as a death of journalism. It was an amazing, extravagant death that it was engaged in. It was an incredible centre, and it was all put on by the German government. It must have cost, I don't know how much, but I asked a spokesman how much it cost. They didn't give out a figure yet. There will be some kind of figure, but that figure will be enormous because it was the most incredible place to work. Never mind all the workstations, all of the free footage they would give you, all the pooled footage. And photos. There was also, free food, wine, an endless buffet, flowing drinks, kind of recreation room, table football. It was an extraordinary. It was like being on a cruise ship, basically.
It was too easy. It was too comfortable. It was like we were being pampered by the government that we're supposed to be reporting on. I see many kind of conflict of interests with what I just saw, and also just some of the conversations I had with the other journalists there. It was just shocking because it wasn't journalism at all. To me, it's puppeteering or regurgitating. It was like the German government and the G7 Press Center were, the mother bird, regurgitating just all the information on the things. What kind of...
We were all in a big nest, we were all there just... You're absolutely right. And we were corralled. It was very controlled, very, controlled. It was in a good way. It was like, you imagine if you're a kind of... you're in your 70s, you've earned a bit of money and you go on a world cruise. It's like that feeling of just like wherever I go, I'll be fine. There's always going to be people on hand. If I need a drink, they'll bring it. Literally, they were serving people. I would just sit down, and if I couldn't get my fork onto my empty plate quicker than they would take it away. It was like proper, excellent service. I'm now critiquing it like a restaurant because that's sort of what it was.
But my question is, what kind of ethic violations, what kind of journalism violations did you kind of experience or see there? What do you think is really the bigger picture of everything that kind of went down?
I don't think it was almost like it was kind of a violation of reality. That's what it felt like to me, because everyone was walking around with these you probably noticed, these very sort of serious expressions. They'd all flown in from wherever, Australia, Japan, the US, England. They're all there, doing their thing, and it was all like, right, we've got to get this stuff done. I mean, I don't quite know what they were doing, because what they were doing is simply writing around the various press releases that were coming around. So in other words, it was journalism. It wasn't journalism. It was the regurgitation of stories and footage and stuff, all the stuff that had been thrashed out months ago anyway. Yeah. And then we were sitting in that press area, which was amazing, and hats off to whoever organised it. But we were sitting there, and they had these big screens showing the kind of footage from like the Alpine walkabout they went on, Obama and Merkel and Cameron and all of the others. And it looked so weird and false and pathetic and nothing and like a little children's program or something. Yes. And everyone's looking at it, that's them doing that thing. Yeah, they're getting on with that. And I'm sitting there sort of looking around at people going, well, this isn't anything. This is what we're taking this seriously, right? Yeah. It was like being at a pantomime and just everyone taking it seriously, what was going on stage.
It was like the German government did the job for the journalists. It was just everything that they were doing there, they could have easily done from a hotel, like you mentioned before. And it was just interesting and intriguing. I mean, seeing this kind of new experiencing it firsthand is surreal, because we know the mainstream media is not doing their job in any way, shape, or form. But when you're there, and when you're literally seeing the papers, the pictures, the videos just being fed to the journalists, and the journalists just retyping the words that we're giving to them and selling it to you like it's news. It's not. I call it propaganda, because we're not getting any kind of investigative journalism. We're not getting any kind of vetting. We're not getting any kind of hard questions. And this is what we call, journalism. This is what we call the mainstream media.
It's public relations. Yeah. It's public relations is what it is. The people who were there were engaged in a giant public relations operation, an extremely well-run one and extremely expensive. So it should be good, and it was. And so they were just, the whole thing was a press release. Everyone was just part of a giant press release, and 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 there's this kind of sick agreement between the media and the, whatever you want to call them, in this case the government, the powers that be, whoever happens to be organising something like this, that they'll go along with it. So they'll go, yeah, we'll print this stuff because we've got to kind of fill up our things and make out that we're doing the news. And if you give it to us, we'll then do that. It'll be fine. We'll thrash out some kind of a kind of lame agreement here, whereby we all just participate in the same extremely empty and facile charade.
Or circle jerk, as I would call it, to be honest with you. It's jerkalism. It's not journalism, it's jerkalism, as Skelton said. He wrote a great article about just the whole process. You guys should definitely check it out. It's going to be in the link below. But overall, moving forward, you're one of the few journalists that actually reports on serious issues, does the investigating. You're actually here in Austria with us at the Bilderberg meeting. Obvious question would be, obvious answer, but I want to hear your perspective on it. Why is there no press at the Bilderberg Group?
Well, this is something obviously, every time you come to something like this, you kind of ruminate on it and you think, well, why? I don't quite know why. And I realised that having come from the G7, it's kind of crystallised a lot of things in my mind. And something that I've had said to me and accepted as kind of, okay, fine, by journalists in the past, but I'm talking about mainstream journalists, not people like you, they've said, well, look, I mean, I could go, but what would I report on? You know, there's no press centre, there's no press releases. What I actually do? You know, and I've sort of gone in the past, gone, yeah, no, I guess you're right, yeah. And now I'm absolutely not accepting that. That is not good enough. It is not good enough. It's not good enough to say, do you know what? I can't do it because it's a bit hard. It'll be like calling a pest exterminator and them going, well, I'm sorry, the mouse has gone under the cooker. I can't get it. I'm not really cut out for that. I don't want to sort of bend down and get it. So I'm just going to stand here and no.
When it comes to actually working, I think we've talked about this before. I think the problems are kind of twofold. Some journalists, circlists, are kind of lazy and kind of entitled. Other ones are kind of stretched too thin. And when it comes to involving more resources and actually investigating something and making the phone calls and being on the ground and investigating it, a lot of times they're like, I'm not going to put in all those resources. And the second point of view is there's obviously some kind of censorship happening, obviously, of this meeting as well, because if a news organization cared about news and information, they would be covering 100 or so of the top world's corporate leaders, banking, government institutions, and they would actually care to do the legwork, but they don't. So I think,
it's a bit hard to pick those two things apart. I think because the first point you made about being stretched too thin is absolutely correct, and it's become a truism that mainstream newspapers and newsrooms, they've just been eviscerated. There hasn't been the funding. They can't compete with the staff. So that's why your newspapers are just publishing press releases that have written around a bit, and because they can't afford really to do anything else. The age of that kind of thing is, well, it's certainly gone for the mainstream to a large degree. Obviously, stories do break, and there are exceptions to this, obviously. And obviously this is not a sweeping statement about all journalists, I think, but there are situations and processes that take place, like the G7, where the very worst kind of dynamics are brought up to right in front and centre, and it makes you go, okay, this just isn't working, this isn't anything at all.
And it's easy and it's lazy and it's very convenient for them, especially with just being able to puppet something and not actually have to work and then be able to work on other stuff before. So I see that as like one of the main problems that this kind of new day and age of information and this kind of journalism is facing. And then I also see the other side of it, which is just complete and utter nonsensical, not caring, not giving a damn, being entitled, and also some forms of obvious censorship by the higher-ups that we see, especially when it comes to something like Bilderberg and being able to report on this honestly and ethically. I mean, last night we met with pretty much the whole press corps of the White House, talking to them, being able to, have a couple drinks with them, off record. Those journalists were just telling me, like, yeah, we're not journalists. You guys are journalists. We're not journalists in any way, shape, or form. And other ones just dismissed it and wouldn't even want to hear it. And they wanted to just talk about food, which is just surprising. So with this landscape, how do you see things evolving? How do you see things changing? And how can we maybe reverse this trend?
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? I think that people in general respond, by which I mean the kind of media consuming public, respond well to things that they feel are authentic and real, and that are grounded in some kind of reality of maybe they've had to get this fact, maybe they've had to go somewhere and get this document, or maybe they've had to chase after this guy and stick a microphone in his face, and people I think are still, luckily, fairly well attuned to rubbish, and I say that, you know, obviously we get inured because of how much stuff we get is just so packaged and processed. It's like school kids where they can't chew anymore. You've read that story where the food they're eating is so kind of soft. It's like they've lost the power in their jaw. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like that it can be a bit like that. But even so, I think that when the real stuff comes along, and the real stuff doesn't have to be anything complicated. It could be something literally like I remember you last year just running alongside Peter Sutherland, sticking a microphone and just getting in their face, getting through the kind of all of the packaging and sort of peering inside and just abrasively getting at something, anything, literally anything. And I think that's when people see it, they go, okay, well, I'm dealing with something that's real here. Until, you know, eventually they'll become much more sophisticated and they'll have fake versions of you running around, doing an entirely fake version of this. In which case, at that point, I'm just going away and living on a boat somewhere.
Charlie, it's, again, an honor and pleasure to be on the front lines with you here, not only at the G7, but right now at Bilderberg. Where can people find out your articles? Where can people check out more information about you?
Well, just go to the Guardian website and there'll be all kinds of stuff on there. And in a modern fashion, I am tweeting.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
What's your Twitter name?
My Twitter name is, I don't know why it is this, it's Duyuk. It's D-E, I have to spell it every time I say it. Probably shouldn't get a Twitter name you have to say. Spell. It's D-E-Y-O-O-K, Duyuk.
All right. If you want some real journalism, got it. If you want some real journalism, follow Charlie on Twitter. And of course, we also have Change Media University. We are doing a one-on-one crash course. I will teach you how to do this at PorkFest. More information about Charlie and Change Media University will be in the description below. Thank you again so much for watching. If you found this talk helpful, click the like button. And of course, don't forget to subscribe.